The first question you can ask when watching this manga is who is the most handsome man in the Threscia Empire? Anyone who even laid eyes on her face would give one answer. Jet black hair that doesn't fall to the waist, round blue eyes that sparkle like stars. Erwin Lilius, Duchess of Carlisle, daughter of Archduke Verma and wife of Duke Carlisle, is considered the most beautiful woman in the empire. However, behind her sweet and attractive appearance, she hid the appearance of a grumpy wife, terrifying the entire family of the Duke. The girl is the daughter of an archduke who dedicated his life to the empire. She was always a rude and irritable woman. Moreover, she hated her husband with all her heart, not wanting to have anything to do with him. Duke Ferwin Carlisle addressed his companions. After all, they are terribly impatient. Their marriage contract by the Verma Duchy had not yet expired. One of the men just wanted to say that I haven't heard any news during these 4 years since their marriage. If suddenly the Duke is on bad terms with the Duchess, then he should say so directly. The man himself needed to think about it. After all, it was necessary to ask about this not from him but from the girl herself. After all, she is avoiding him. One of the men went crazy. After all, there are no people who could simply tolerate the Duchess's character. They were ready to hand over the temperament of the divorce petition to them and to remarry the Duke to another woman. But the Duke himself understood perfectly well that violating a treaty is an extremely difficult act in diplomacy. You only have to wait a year. After all, he does not need to neglect the state agreement. Well, the subordinate did not agree with the Duke. Apparently, I needed to think about my future. Through the generations, the Carlisle family has seen only a few 25-year-old heirs, and he will soon be 25. The Duke knew that he was born when his father was 40, and he also has the power to conceive a child, so now is not the time for this. And he wanted to hear the same thing again, and then he ordered his subordinate to get out of here. The meeting with His Majesty was ultimately unsuccessful, but the guys were now interested in another question. Why did the Duchess call them? He could only suspect that perhaps the Duchess will again be asked to collect another fortune for the Dukedom of Verma. One man decided to break the silence, and he asked the lady directly why she called them here. The girl suddenly returned and showed her gaze. She explained that she had one thing to do with the guys. From now on, they will stop sending wealth to the Verma Duchy. And it was also necessary to convey that from now on, the Duchess will not deprive the peasants of their fortune. And she asks for forgiveness for acting so stupidly because of her extraordinary affection for her family. After the man left, the girl was finally able to relax. She figured out one thing, and now she was worried that they wouldn't start to suspect her. After all, it was necessary to quickly resolve everything that Erwin had done just then. Hay managed to survive, unlike the original ending. Not long ago, she was a part-time saleswoman. There were many occasions when she woke up in the hospital due to her dimensional ruin, which lasted until the very dawn. But that day was a little different. The girl woke up in bed, and I saw a guy with rolled-up sleeves, a shirt with unbuttoned buttons under which a slender body was visible. Lovely platinum hair. The unknown man was sleeping on the edge of the bed next to her. The girl felt a panic attack because she had just been at work. She couldn't understand why she suddenly found herself in bed and who this man was next to her. She couldn't understand what was happening here. But then the Duke woke up and then touched the girl's face. He saw that she had woken up, and suddenly he kissed her. In the next morning, the girl woke up in the same bed. Next to her was a maid and a doctor. The doctor said that the lady was not in danger. Before she fainted, the girl saw a man who called her Erwin. These people just addressed her as Duchess. But apparently, she has a different personality, and she became the villain of the novel. Erwin screamed to the last that the accusation was not fair, the future of an illegitimate child, a victim of defeat and the Duchy of Verma. She was his only daughter, and whose blood flowed through her, and whose life was dedicated to the Threscian Empire. The imperial family, which is on friendly terms with the Archduke, accepted it as a gift, after which she married the Duke to be the right hand of the Emperor and an influential person in the empire. Their marriage also symbolizes the Commonwealth, so they had to remain in it for at least 5 years. However, the girl hated her husband because he put his own country on the brink of destruction. For 4 years of marriage, there was no news about the appearance of an heir, and the rumor that the woman was not capable of even fulfilling the minimum duties as a duchess spread throughout the duchy. And one day, when there was nothing left to complete the contract, someone put poison in the Duke's wine. Suspicion immediately fell on his wife, whom the man hated with all his heart, and found out that she had illegally transferred the estate to the Verma Duchy. The girl was sentenced to death. Erwin forgave the latter so that the guilt would not be unfair, but absolutely no one believed her, even once a husband who truly loved her. Ferwin remarried Countess Stella, who courted him with an open heart. Fervin remarried, who nursed him with an open heart, and they lived happily ever after. But the main character wondered why exactly she entered this body. Since she is already in this body, her indignation is unlikely to change anything. This means that it was necessary to live on her differently than her body. The girl turned to the maid asking how long she had been married. The maid replied that this year it will be 5 years already. After receiving the answer, the girl thanked the maid, which surprised everyone else. After all, she had never done such a thing. Well, now the main character did not understand that she would live the rest of the year quietly, and even if she got a divorce, she would receive a country house as compensation for her pleasure. After 2 discussions on how to stay alive, the girl came to the conclusion that first she needed to start making a plan to change the opinions of others about her. And the first person whose idea of her should change will, of course, be her husband. Suddenly, out of the blue, Hertz appeared. He immediately asked his wife how she was feeling. The girl, looking at the man, could not take her eyes off. She recalled the moment when he was next to her in that bed and slept, and his behavior is noticeably different from when he whispered in her ear. Seeing that his wife was all right, he decided to leave, but suddenly the main character stopped him. She thanked him for coming to see her, from which everyone around was simply shocked. After all, hearing such words from the lady was something with something. The most obvious reason why the girl was sentenced to death is because of her bad relationship with her husband. That is why, in the case of poison, they first began to suspect her. The first step to clearing your reputation is to improve your relationship with your husband. But this first step of hers ended in failure because the guy didn't even show it and simply ignored her. The main character asked the owner of her body a question. What did she manage to do that made her husband react like that? Entering his room, the Duke blushed. His whisper, in which he begged her to wake up after she lost consciousness, led to this result. She simply thanked him. He understood that people certainly change, but he couldn't believe that much. After some time, the Duke called the maid into the room. He wanted to confirm his suspicion, that his wife is clearly acting suspicious and different from his usual behavior. The maid told how the doctor said that nothing so strong happened to his wife, and you just need to monitor her condition. However, one thing is clear, as if the mistress behaves as if she were a completely different person. Her character and manner of speech became much softer. The Duke understands why she changed. Usually you don't get a word from her, but here she even thanked me. Then the maid suggested her idea. What they say before the illness was a person's day after the illness became different. The lady herself must have been tired of being surrounded by thorns. The Duke did not want to believe in meaningless hopes. The Duke remembered that he promised himself that he would stop harboring false hopes, that he would no longer allow himself to be deceived. She didn't even speak to the people of the estate except when giving orders or anger. The number of times she talked to her hated husband, and the lady who constantly served her during his entire marriage. You could count it on the fingers of one hand. Madame Tilly asked the Duchess what she wanted for lunch today, to which the girl replied that he was incredible as always. The first time the girl turned to Madame Tilly, she was scared. At least now it seems to her that Madame feels comfortable next to her. Irvin said that Madame looked busy today and therefore asked what happened. Madame reported that the gentleman plans to have dinner at home today. Irwin didn't understand why he suddenly decided to do this after advice, but this was her chance to allow her to change his opinion about her. And she also has a wonderful opportunity to stay alive. Later in the evening, the maid came in and said that dinner was ready. Today, Mr. Dinner is the dining room, so they set the table there. He himself looked tense. Apparently, Madame Tilly's niece is still afraid of her. But Irvin asked me to tell the master that today she would have dinner with him, which made the maid surprised because the girl herself had never spoken about this before. This was her first dinner together. In this case, it was necessary to make a good impression. Irvin asked the maid for her hand to help her put on the dress, but the maid grew fear all the time. The next stage was makeup, to reassure the maid. The girl said that she was happy with everything about working as a maid, so she shouldn't worry too much. Yes, she didn't see other maids as often as she did with the Tilly lady, and everyone turned on the girl. They observed only the appearance of an evil girl for 4 years. Therefore, she has no choice but to little by little convince them that she has changed. But suddenly the girl looked at herself in the mirror and saw his makeup. So I asked the maid what it was. The maid said that this was her usual makeup, and she began to apologize for doing something stupid. After the girl washed her face, she understood that in this novel they never talked about the main character's makeup. The lady was also asked if she would like to decorate her hair with a flower. As always, she always used roses, but now she wanted to decorate her hair with any lily of the valley flower. The Duke asked Alfred why the food had not yet been served. The man said that the lady said that she would also have dinner with him, so he should wait a little longer until she comes. It was great for the Duke. He didn't understand why a person who couldn't even wait to speak. I suddenly decided to have dinner with him. And suddenly the girl came into this room and simply said that she wanted to have dinner with her husband. And I was very surprised at what he wanted. Then the Duke wondered why she was doing something she had never done before. Her makeup is everywhere, because after the wedding he is the first to see her without makeup. The Duchess knew what she would do this time. Let's torture him. He promised himself that he would no longer follow her around. After that, they began to eat. He decided to ask the girl a question directly. What did she start this time? Well, she answered that she was just trying to improve the relationship between them. Irvin understood that he needed the same one, and he knows her tricks. Well, the girl tried to resist again. After all, she is simply trying to fulfill her marital duties. Suddenly the Duke became very embarrassed, and he called it a duty to conceive a child. If you remember the content of the novel, it can be seen that although everyone admired the tenderness of the Emperor's younger brother, Duke Sivalom, the whole theme of people being sick and struck down by the unjust Duke is over. Even after marriage, he was considered the ideal man. Many women belonging to Soviet society were still waiting for him, all because they expected to divorce the Duke after 5 years. In this situation, the most effective way is for the Duke's wife, which would help preserve her honor and dignity, was the birth of a child. In other words, if she bears the Duke's child, she will be able to keep her place. However, she did not do this, because she couldn't sleep with a person who was indifferent to her. Therefore, she just wanted to calmly even until the end of the contract and then get a divorce. And then she has to give him a child. The Duke smiled, as I expected to hear from a man who said on his wedding night that he did not want to mix his blood with the aggressors. Then he asked me to forget about what he just said. The Duke asked not to pay attention to him and continue with his meal, but the girl didn't understand how he laughed and put her in a good position during the conversation. Herzog came closer to the girl, and he ordered her to behave as usual. Stop doing what you did before. The girl saw that he saw himself as if he was angry, but his eyes shift. She didn't understand why he suddenly got angry and what happened to him. And finally, the Duke asked not to come into his sight again, and so that she wouldn't dare touch him anymore. The main character did not understand what Irvin did to make her Duke hate her. Suddenly, the girl was approached by Madame Tilly, who kissed her to calm her main goddaughter so that she would not worry too much. Although the main character knew that she was acting rudely towards her husband, but she didn't understand whether he couldn't give her another chance. Madame confirmed that I already noticed that the girl had changed. He has enough problems for now. He was too tired of waiting to acknowledge the fact that she had changed. Already outside in the garden, Madame and the main character gathered for tea. Madame Tilly herself noted that Irvin is such a busy person, but Madame is very grateful to her for finding time for her. Irvin thanked Madame again, that after losing her memory she taught her. Irwin asked Madame Tilly if there would be a festival at the Marquise's residence next week. The woman confirmed this. This time the Duchess herself was to host the festival, but she always refused, so the Marquise decided to take her place. In general, a cultural festival is an event in which aristocrats and their wives are given over to the festivities for a certain period of time, but it's actually a banquet where everyone competes to see who can spend the most money. However, the stage that noble ladies decorated with themselves was valued much more than the one on which they spent a fortune. The main character, being a real singer, was confident in her dancing skills, acting and singing. If the Duchess, who had been cut off from social circles all this time, had prepared a festival, then many aristocrats would have taken part in this event. So she asked Madame if she could take part in the festival this time. She is going to use this opportunity to change others' opinions of her. And Madame herself was very surprised. For the first time in a long time, she heard something positive. The girl promised that she would perform a song, so she needs to find the best person in orchestra to accompany her. Then Madame Tilly asked if it would be better for the girls to also invite the choir. After all, there would be people who would set the rhythm and play the melody. But the girl replied that there was no need to worry about it, because she could handle it herself. In order to confirm her words, the girl began to sing. All the palace workers heard this melody, and even Madame Tilly was very surprised how much the girl hid her talent all the time. And judging by her reaction, Madame Tilly liked the Duchess's skills. She will show exactly what her character could be like in reality. Days later, the maid called the mistress. She told her that when the Marchioness saw the letter which said that the Duchess was ready for the festival, she immediately revised the letter 10 times. Is it true? And it seems everyone really wants to know how the lady has changed. Well, the maid noticed that society had already focused its gaze on the young girl. She herself understood perfectly well that thanks to Madame Tilly, rumors of changes had spread not only among the pretenders of this estate, but also beyond its borders, which is why her reputation seemed to have begun to slowly improve. But besides this, what her husband thinks is much more important. As for her total changes, this interested her most of all. She was waiting for him on the stairs. I noticed that today he will also be late, although she wants to meet him and arrange a reaction in person. After the evening of that day, he does not appear at home. She can't sleep until he comes, but as luck would have it, she was already so tired that she slowly closed her eyes. Unexpectedly, she opened her eyes back, and I realized that I almost dozed off. But this time she was already in her bed where Madame Tilly stood next to her. Madame was worried about your mistress's health, so she asked her not to sit and wait for the gentleman on the flight of stairs, opposite the front door. The girl asked if her husband still continued to hate her. Madame Tilly just smiled, and he noticed that the girl ended up here in bed not with her help. It was the young master. After all, every time he always carried her bed. Coming to the imperial palace despite working overtime, he said that he could not entrust his wife to anyone else. The girl was very surprised. It turns out her husband is not, but she understood that he said that he did not want to intersect with her anymore. But for some reason he treats her differently behind her back. Hates her. Already in the office of the Duke himself, a guest came to him, and there he began to notice that his wife had carefully spread rumors about herself. Lately. It was the first time he had heard the lady's name sounded so often in social circles. It was Emperor Caesar. Well, this time the Duke will personally preside over the festival. According to what the servants of the estate say, the lady stopped slandering the pistol even more dearly. Personally, her husband knew about this because that's all they talk about around her. Herzog realized that he had a strange woman. After she woke up, it was as if everything had changed in her. Why does he run to the mansion in the midst of work? He takes her bed and then returns again to the yard. He didn't understand why there were such difficulties. Why does he himself do what the servants can do? Perhaps he doesn't want others to see her pursing her lips in her sleep. Maybe he doesn't want anyone else to see how cute she is. When a barely noticeable mouth opens as if in confusion every time he makes her bed, he himself doesn't know what's happening to him. He could only suspect that this is her new method to mock him. Or the evening person has really changed. The Emperor reminded the guy of the day when he first met the girl, and now and then his face looked the same. The cameramen also decided to take part in the cultural festival. Naturally, they will be together with the Empress. Then the Duke noticed that his wife's actions could be rude. She was working in another country, and after her life she had no contact with people in secular society. But the Emperor didn't care whether he was rude or not. He is just interested in looking at the changes in the mistress. Moreover, this time it will be in charge of the festival for the first time. Moreover, she has already hired the best orchestra and pianists. She also prepared a song that she will perform herself. And apparently he himself is holding on to this. He was the first to hear what he was surprised by. Even the Emperor noticed that they live together in the same house, and strangers know more about her than she does herself. The Emperor also came closer to the Duke and asked him to consider her actions. A handshake as a sign of reconciliation and his wife's communication will be better in the future. After all, it is a huge attraction that after several years of her atrocities, she has finally calmed down. And apparently her husband's prayers were heard. After all, who knows, maybe they will have a child in whose veins the blood will mix. This would be a significant event, and from a national and diplomatic point of view, their union would become even stronger. The soldiers reported that the installation of the stage in the main banquet hall was completed. They also covered the piano with a cloth so that no dust would remain on it. Irvin to work, sent the soldiers to rest. There were 3 days left before the festival. Several aristocratic families also willingly agreed to come. Yes, even the Emperor and Empress will take part in it. What an unfortunate set of circumstances. This is a chance to show everyone that she is not that same villain, capable of killing her own husband. Madame Tilly also came into the room and reported that the lady's dress had arrived. Then she asked permission if she could bring it here. The girl gave a positive answer. Then Madame asked if the girl wanted to accept him now. After all, if suddenly it doesn't fit, then you can change something right on the spot. Only Irvin took off his clothes. She was wearing only pajamas. She accidentally looked at herself in the mirror and began to pose. But noticing that the figure is a heroine, it turned out to be much better than she expected. And suddenly her husband came into the room, who saw an awkward picture. The girl was embarrassed, and she asked if she could come in when she was just changing clothes. Well, I received the answer that they are married, and there is nothing like that. Ferwin hasn't been able to talk to her lately. After all, she was constantly sleeping and he carried her to bed. There have been no events held on the estate for several years. Fervin came closer to the girl and asked her directly what and for what purpose she began to do something that she had not done before. He didn't understand why she was doing this. I note that she did not need to take on the organization of the festival. This should have been entrusted to the Marquise as before. Well then, the girl recalled the guy's words. And what did he personally tell her? That she was fulfilling her official duties, the future Duke of Ennius. This is what monks do. And during the dialogue, it was not suddenly that the girl stumbled and began to fall. Her husband managed to catch her, and the guys ended up in bed. When it came to the topic, does Duke really like a face of tons of makeup more than natural beauty? The Duke just had a strange expression on his face. He didn't want to be avoided again. Then Herzog began to pester the girl. What was there to do against it? Therefore, Irwin realized that the dialogue would not take place in this vein. Therefore, he suggested that they go up and have a proper conversation. But first, he wanted to hear the truth. The girl noticed that she simply wanted to improve relations with the Duke. The Duke warned the girl that if she prophesies her tricks, then he advises her to stop. But she did not provoke him into tricks, and she doesn't do anything. He just misunderstood her. She simply rethought the past and regrets her actions. For Fervin, it was just funny. After all, she deceived him and said that you want to live in harmony with him. And I decided to take the lead role and carry the child. Well, I believed something. A person needs to change so radically just to achieve his goal. After all this time she treated him like a piece of garbage, and now she thinks that she can get away with anything. Such rude words brought tears to the girl's eyes. She could not become a singer, and her death was not fair. And what did she do to deserve to be reborn in the body of a villain? And if she had been reborn as the main character, Stella wouldn't be so angry now. Even finding herself in such a situation, she bends over backwards and only gets the lack of trust from his side. Seeing the tears, the Duke was very surprised. But the girl didn't stop, she just started screaming. Herzog just turned away and gave her a handkerchief so that the girl could wipe away her tears. He tried to calm her down. Tears won't change anything. Then the Duke sat the girl down, and she took her hands to calm her down and began to shed tears. He also asked himself the logical question of what he was doing now. This all confused him too. He stood up abruptly, and he asked me to explain it to him. After all, maybe he didn't understand the situation correctly. He asked her what was the reason that for 4 years she had done nothing but annoy him, and now she decided to change. The girl replied that she regretted making him suffer and being unable to perform even the minimum duties as a duke. She just wants to make amends by fulfilling the roles of a duchess and fulfilling her duties conscientiously. During the remaining year of their 5-year official, emperor-recognized marriage. Then the Duke asked about the child, but the girl replied that she didn't even think about the child in the future so that he wouldn't worry that it was all because of the child, so that she could take his property. She won't bother him about it. She knows that he married her by order of the emperor, but there is only a year left. During this time, she will act like a real duchess, and then they will divorce. Therefore, it is better to let him have a child with the woman whom he sincerely loves. The man replied that he respected her choice, although he doesn't know how long this will last. After the guy left the room, she lay down on the bed. After all, she didn't understand what kind of vulture she had committed, that she had been reborn in the body of this character. Her future will not be easy. Winning his favor will be difficult, but she must perform her duties well to win his trust. The only way to survive here. The Duke was already next to the beast and began to think, how can his wife cry? After all, just think, this woman's eyes are transparent, like amethyst tears. For the first time, he saw her so confused that he made more jokes towards her. That's not what he meant. Then Madame Tilly approached. The woman began to notice that the lady was trying for the Duke. Then the guy wanted to ask something. What does it mean for a woman to cry? Then Madame Tilly replied that they usually cry when they are sad. But she was horrified. Why did Mr. Friend become interested in this? And rather than the lady crying. Then the Duke ordered her to go back and help the girl put on her dress. A little more close to the beast, he listened to the conversation. Fortunately, the Duchess stopped crying. But for some reason, it was this woman who worried him. But it was worth remembering how she treated him throughout all 4 years. And today he feels strange for some reason. Between the Empire of Thracia and the Duchy of Verma. After a long battle, the army of the Empire reached the capital of the Duchy of Verma. It was there that Fervin first met Erwin. He had never loved anyone in his life so much. And then for the first time he entered the battle for something of the heart. It seemed that the Emperor decided to marry them for the purpose of diplomatic problems, however. This was all the result of the fact that the guy found out the intentions of the Emperor's younger brother, Duke Sivilum, to marry the girl. Even when she came to the Empire in the future as the princess of the affected side, she did not utter a word. However, Ferwin believed that if he showed enough zeal, the girl would get used to life as a duchess. Moreover, he believed that he would make her happy and let him do everything for her sake. It was an illusion. Those poisonous words that she threw at him the first night made him grit his lips. Moreover, the words that she would rather die than sleep with him leave his heart to freeze. After so many years of hard work, her hatred disappeared, and in the end the guy did nothing but suppress his burning love for the Duchess. A little later, Erwin was singing. After she sang, everyone around was very surprised. What a beautiful voice she has. No one could have expected that she could sing so well. Before falling into this body, she was an aspiring singer with a musical background. The girls also reported that His Majesty had arrived. I now have the Empress and His Highness the Duke in blue with a sibyl they did not expect. The girl realized that the game was beginning. She couldn't let a mistake slide, especially now the reason the bar was so high was because she could be made a scapegoat if the throne fell. And she is obliged to protect her husband even in such moments as now. If she is doing something wrong now, rather than think that her goal is to humiliate her husband, besides today is the day of her character's debut in public. She must prove to people by her behavior that she is a good wife, worthy of her husband, and she must also charm her husband. Now her life depends on this performance. Before that I wanted to see her. The Duke closed the door. Then the guy extended his hand to the girl, but she fought off his hand. He explained to him that he just wanted to straighten her hair. Fervin noticed. She will behave differently at the ceremony, they won't laugh, so the guys went together. Go down the stairs. Due to the fact that the dress was somehow uncomfortable, the girl tripped and began to fall. Of course, the Duke did not have time to praise her, that is, she hit her head right on the floor. The Duke asked the doctor if his wife was okay. The doctor replied that fortunately the injury was not serious, but it will definitely be difficult for her to stand on stage. The Duke blamed herself. After all, if only he had held her hand, she obviously wouldn't have fallen, but she got the guys to cope. After all, they can't make guests wait. She's tired of hiding. Even reproaches that it is better for her to sit. Then even the Duke asked to listen to the doctor's words. And it's just a song, no one will care if she doesn't sing. But she was going to sing that song because today it was intended for her husband. Therefore, she cannot cancel the performance. Then the Duke agreed to go with her. The guy asked when Herkeg would come down, but he thinks she is late because of the Duke, the maid told the Duke. What not to tell him? The Emperor appeared, who noticed that his younger brother should not speak like that. If he already drinks, he needs to behave with dignity. But the guy just wanted to enjoy the bouquet. After all, today is a special evening. The Duchess makes her debut. Suddenly, the Duke and Duchess began to descend the stairs. Empress, starting to notice. They say to the Emperor that the Duke suffered a lot because of her, but because of the way he looks at her, this is not visible. At the wedding, everything was still clear, but they were also cold to each other, and enemies on the battlefield. Erwin greeted everyone. His Majesty the Emperor, Her Imperial Majesty, and the Duke are self-made. He said that he was already starting to worry, but the girl reassured him by noting that now she would appear more often with her husband at ceremonies. Suddenly, his younger brother appeared behind the Emperor, who couldn't believe that such a couple couldn't attend holidays before. So what is the impression that she was sitting down with her husband? Their status is different. The Duke is not very familiar to the girl in the book. He has not met her, but she does not think that she should get close to him. She also offered her deepest apologies for the fact that you could not fully perform your duties for 4 years. From now on, she did everything in her power to become a good duchess. And as proof, she will perform today's song. The song was dedicated to her husband, and the girl began to sing. It seemed that the audience was happy. The leg didn't hurt much. If this continues, even the performance will be successful. Well, suddenly the girl's leg hurt, and she fell to her knee. Well, through force, the girl continued to sing. After all, she had to survive. After the song, people around began to discuss that the girl sang really beautifully. Even the best singers in front of them can compare with her. And they were all surprised how she could hide her talent for so long. And the song is dedicated to the Duke. After all, Mrs. Damaga has changed. After the song, her husband came up to her and kissed her hand. She thanked her, but he asked her to perform such songs alone from now on. The whole eye is already because he wants her to remain his. Popular novel. Fervin and Stella are the main villain, the villainess Irvin. Maikum appears at the beginning, pushing his husband and his future wife to connect. Her role was simply and not great, to die for the love of others. In the original, the couple was bound only by a marriage contract and nothing more, and nowhere was it written that Fervin liked Irvin even a little. That's what's strange. Erwin didn't understand why the Duke was acting so strangely. He wants her to sing to him for the day. And why does he say that he loves her? In the original, he behaves this way towards the main character and towards her. He doesn't feel anything for her. Confident girl. Only the girl wanted to go to the Marquise who called the Duchess. The Duke stopped her, and I didn't want to let go of my hand. He was afraid to let her go alone. The document was that at least it could be better, but her leg is still not okay. Erwin turned to the Marquise, to her visit to their festival. She also apologized for not being able to pay good attention. Fervin decided to straighten his wife's hair. Others saw this sweet price too. Why were you delighted? End of the festival. The heroine thanked the Emperor and Empress for visiting him. The Emperor and Empress were very surprised, first of all because of the girl's voice. They just don't consider her a criminal because she couldn't show it publicly. Therefore, it's time for her to start appearing in public. My husband took the initiative, and he said that due to her long absence from public, the girl does not know anyone in these circles, which can make her extremely awkward. Therefore, if his wife does not want, he will force her. The younger brother, the Emperor, approached the guys, who said that if Lady Irvin is worried, he will take care of her. The Emperor asked his brother what he was carrying. After all, he's not even her fiancé. And what he received was the answer that Hertz is not competent in some issues, so he is trying to help. Then the guy came closer to the girl. His daughter asked her if she knew the Verma flower. How many aristocrats of high society were worried not seeing her at receptions for so long. He hopes that she will show all the empires her sweet face as quickly as possible and delight them with her wonderful singing. Only the guys wanted to happen for her face. The Duke also beat off his hand. When asked what to do, Hertz, he replied that he was simply brushing off an annoying mosquito and that he should apologize to the girl. When everyone left, Herzog already wanted to say goodbye to the girl and thank her for what she did. But she stopped him by the hand and asked how he liked the song and what he thinks about her. She would like to know the truth. In his thoughts, he understood that she was lovely and beautiful, and in his heart, what had been said for so long was now freely, and now he only wants to hug her. But he didn't show it, and he replied that in 4 years she had yelled at us so much that her voice is truly amazing. Because of this, the piano couldn't even be heard. Well, suddenly he realized that he had said too much, and the girl's face changed. She knows that over the past 4 years she has behaved disgustingly towards him. However, she was consumed by madness and loneliness from living in another country. Therefore, I didn't know if her husband understood. Then he asked her if she wanted forgiveness. She confirmed her words, but the Duke understood perfectly well that people cannot change in a second. But to be honest, she expected him to change. But he loved her, and believed that she would someday accept him if she was honest with him. For 4 years he endured and waited for her to change, but she had never been honest and sincere towards him. The truth is that he was hurt by all her sharp words, but he still wants to believe that she is not lying to him. Now it seems to be pretending to be so. After these words, she simply walked past the Duke and said that she understood everything perfectly. She could not change her opinion about herself in an instant. She thanked him for tonight, and I decided to go and rest. Fervin couldn't believe that she changed her mind so quickly and gave up. He mentally asked her to stop. He didn't understand why she was so nice to him in public, and so he grabbed her and hugged her, and he asked not to leave and not to abandon him. In the beginning, the girl asked to let her go. She had no intention of going anywhere. The Duke explained that he really liked the girl's singing, and he just didn't put it that way. She prepared so hard for this performance, so he couldn't call it anything else. And only the girl began to read the guy for the fact that he was so cute in plain sight. And as soon as they were alone, he immediately began to be rude to her. And then suddenly he kissed her. After all this, Erwin lay on the bed. Both were embarrassed during the kiss. The girl didn't understand how the Duke could kiss her when he didn't have a drop of sincerity in his soul. But he called this kiss sincere. In addition, she asked to prove her thoughts with actions. Madame Tilly entered the room, and she said that she would help the lady take off her dress. After removing the dress at the end, the girl felt lighter, after which Madame started working. Yes, Madame Tilly suggested we go for a walk in the garden because the evening air would help her relax and put her thoughts in order. In his room, the Duke thought he was going crazy. He was too impulsive when he kissed the girl, but he didn't even really have time to kiss her. He just touched her with his lips. But he, as she asked, proved the action with his intentions. He didn't understand why he was rude to her because he didn't mean it. It would be better to just remain silent. He couldn't understand why he constantly hurts her. After all, she gathered her strength again and again, but he just broke her expectations in a second. He didn't understand why this girl bothered him so much. And opening the window, he saw a girl in the garden, and I was perplexed as to what she was doing there. Suddenly, Erwin took off her shoes and put her feet on the table. The Duke saw all this, and why was he embarrassed? Her legs were swollen from walking around in stockings all day, and she tried to massage her legs. Already at night, Madame Tilly woke up the girl. After all, it was time to get up. At first, the girl didn't understand what was happening. But then Madame Tilly reminded me of what they talked about at night. Starting from today, it should greet the master upon his arrival in the courtyard, while drinking tea in the evening in the garden. Madame Tilly noticed. The thing is that the gentleman is much simpler than the heroine thinks. If you continue to do everything that you did, and soon he will answer her. Well, understanding that she needs to get closer to her husband as quickly as possible. She asked Madame for the method. The woman was surprised, of course, but named one way to express her sincerity. Madame Tilly has already prepared a dress for the girl, and the conversation came up about cufflinks. The girl doesn't know if she should take her husband's cufflinks. Then Madame said that this is good sympathy and attractiveness. Over time, she can start a conversation with him and find out if they have similar tastes. 4 years must have been very difficult. She needs to fix her relationships and personal life in order for their marriage to blossom again. Then the conversation turned to the child. After all, their 5th anniversary is coming soon. In the Duke's family, it is customary to have an heir within a given time. The eldest members of her family suddenly change, so Madame is sure that the entire Carlyle family is waiting for the birth of an heir. The girl understood that if she did not make peace with her husband, she would die. She had to continue her relationship with him, even if she had to give birth. Something she swore he wouldn't do. The most important thing now is to restore their relationship. That's why she was going to go to him. There was a guard at the entrance to the Duke's office. First of all, of course, he was surprised that the lady came here so early. After all, she never came to help her husband put away his clothes. So he asked to be allowed to notify His Majesty. But then Madame Tilly interrupted the dialogue. Who shouted at Alfredo that how dare he talk to my lady like that? And immediately let him open the doors. As soon as the girl came in, Madame Tilly and the butler began to whisper. Only Alfred wanted to inform him that His Majesty was changing his clothes. Madame knew about this, and she smiled a sly smile and thought that Erwin was very naive. Already inside, the girl was looking for a guy. But it was not him that she began to look at the room. The decoration of his room and where the insult was than she expected. He gave her the main bedroom to avoid problems, but she didn't think that he was sleeping here. Again, she didn't understand why the heroine of her body was so cruel to her husband. and by chance she walked up to the table and dropped off the leaflets. But within a day, it was already Fervin. Ferwin is wearing only one towel. He asked the girl directly why she came to his room. Then the girl explained that she had come here to help him choose cufflinks. Until the end, the girl did not understand what this meant. Then the Duke decided to explain that it's just a family tradition. This means that the husband usually has much more energy in the mornings, so he tries to get away with it in the morning, and his wife then chooses cufflinks for him. This is an excuse to get into your husband's bedroom in the morning. The girl decided to play along with her husband, and she asked why they would start a tradition. The Duke threw her onto the bed. He took her hand and let her touch his body, but she was even embarrassed by this basket. I just wanted to joke. Well, because the man was wet because he had just gotten out of the shower and the girl asked for his turn. The guys were waiting in the corridor. Albert was worried because much more time had passed, but Madame Tilly only smiled sarcastically. And suddenly Alfred could not wait any longer and decided to go inside. Then the woman stopped him. He doesn't even need to think about knocking inside, and stop constantly checking the time. After the Fervin dried himself off, the girl couldn't even look at him. She was embarrassed just by one glance. Therefore, I would like to quickly leave here. And she said that she was so tired from everything that happened in the morning that I decided to go. But suddenly they stopped. And since she has already come here, let him help you choose at least clothes. She went into the dressing room, and I decided to quickly find some kind of kit and go from there. Erwin also found cufflinks. She remembered Madame Tilly's words that this was the only way to talk to him alone. But the situation got out of control, and now the girl didn't understand how she could even get close to him, even if he takes her jokes seriously. When the girl gave the cufflinks to her husband, he was surprised by their shape. And what choice did she make? Therefore, I asked her directly whether there was any motive for her to choose them. Erwin gave her reason. She wanted to get closer to him much more, and start living with a married couple again. No litter. Of course, it was strange for him to hear this from her, but he was glad to hear this. In the corridor, Alfred could not check that the relationship between the Duchess and the Duke of Coins would suddenly improve. A little later, the guys met in the hall. Fervin asked Erwin to stay here and wait. After all, from today onwards, they won't have dinner together. And finally, he asked her to prepare a late dinner. The maid just looked at this beautiful couple, and they admired how beautiful they looked together. And the married couple who seems ideal to everyone, and the wife who will never reveal her husband, it looked much better than it was before. Well, suddenly Erwin asked about the late dinner. After all, I didn't fully understand its essence. Then the man explained that this was also her important responsibility. As a duchess, this is when they will be alone. Well, since he called, he began to rush to his work. After their wedding night, the girl and the guy never shared the family bed together. This was supposed to be their first night together. But even then, everything did not go according to plan. The girl caused a scandal. The first night was the worst, described by only one decomposition. With such a description of the wedding night, the Duke would probably have been against unity. But suddenly he changed his mind. Of course the girl was shocked. After all, she didn't even have a thought about it. And besides, Hertz said this in front of everyone. You can't just let it go. Well, Madame Tilly was very happy, that she even shed a tear of joy. She believed in the Duchess that she could change. In the garden, Madame Tilly noticed that most likely the Duchess was happy. Now this elder will not scold her as soon as the baby appears. There will be no pressure. And she even had the feeling as if they were playing a second wedding. But Erwin was not completely happy. After all, her main goal is to successfully complete this wedding and get a divorce. Erwin somehow wanted to console herself as little as possible, and she proposed the theory that the Duke must have mentioned the unity purely out of politeness, to which Madame Tilly denied it. After all, the gentleman would not throw around such words. He won't even touch her without the lady's permission because he made a promise. Erwin was also interested in the question of why he suddenly started talking about unity. Madame joyfully explained that lately the lady had become so much prettier. How could the gentleman react differently? At work here in the Imperial Palace. The Duke recalled the moment when he was putting on cufflinks. He understood perfectly what she meant. That's why he tried to bring the conversation to a peaceful direction. However, just don't start to establish a good relationship. Pressure towards the girl so that this one gives birth to a successor. Just become stronger. Instead of making her endure all that pressure, it would be better to demonstrate how close they are. Even the savvy Miss Tilly country is obsessed with everything related to the heir. Maybe to protect the girl from the elders. But even he was wondering how far this would go. Well, he worries much more about his wife. The friend appeared right behind him. Renz. The Count said that the servant outside knocked without stopping. He kept wanting to give the letter. And the Duke didn't even notice it. The Count also noticed the Duke's cufflinks. After all, it's unlikely that he would have put them here himself, when the Duke said that it was his wife. The Count was surprised. After reading the letter that was addressed to the Duke, he was surprised. Apparently now there was something urgent that needed to be resolved during the day. The message from His Majesty cannot be postponed. The Count saw the wait's face, who was upset and understood that the Empire would not survive without him. Then he wished him good luck, and also asked him if he was really going to go home early to his wife, the fox, and the children's rabbit. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the Duke of the throne of the Count that he fell in love with his wife. The Count began to explain what was certain of her beauty. Kind soul. But the hurts changed that very day. The girl was his first love, and he is sure that it will be the last. He knows what it is from the very beginning. A new festival will also start soon, and Lady Belle will be there. At first, the Duke did not understand about honey, but later the Count reminded him that it was the Dacian Kadi who was his wife. Fervin's mother died during childbirth. Her father showed no interest, since the guy spent his childhood abandoned on a country estate. Only Miss Tilly and Nanny remained in education at that time, and Miss Stella Bell, who lived in a neighboring estate. The Duke explained to the Count that now other women are not interested in him since he is already married. So the Counts had nothing more to say. The Storm said that it was time for him to meet with His Majesty. Then the Count wrote that he was now definitely spending time with Her Majesty. Empresses. Irvin was being prepared. Madame Tilly Semi is very happy. How much time has passed since that time? It's time to plan for an heir. Suddenly the girls brought one bag. It gave off a very strange aroma. Therefore Irwin immediately refused to use any suspicious things. Well, Madame Tilly quickly fell asleep under the girl's dress. The main character began to think about what kind of scent it was. The maid explained that this aroma is so beautiful that she can't even feel the tips of her fingers. Suddenly the maid asked the mistress why she so rarely visits aristocrats from a different family. The girl explained that next week she would go to a ball at the Imperial Palace. Suddenly Alfredo came in, who said that a message had arrived from Mr. A. The letter said that His Majesty Fervin would have to stay late at work. The fact that he asked her to wait for him and go to bed first, so it was possible to change clothes calmly. Well, after hearing how sad the maids were with this new news, they started to feel sad, so the girl started to undermine. She explained that since the maid had put a lot of effort into her clothes and appearance for dinner, and the very sad maid was immediately glad. By winning the hearts of the maids, she will be able to get rid of her bad image, since the girl wanted to spend a little time alone and what to do with herself. And as soon as dinner is ready, the bell rings, which will indicate that she can come back. The maid noticed that the Emperor was also a great guy. No matter how many months, how many years we haven't been waiting for this day, but he ruined everything like that. Mr. is a distant relative of the imperial family. The Empress gives birth only to girls. And the next inheritance at the moment is the Duke of Cybele, and he is not married. Therefore, the Duchess is the only one who can give birth to a boy, and he will have every chance of winning the throne. As soon as the maid said this, Madame Tilly became furious with her. After all, you can't talk about something like that. After all, their master is very loyal to them, to the imperial family. So Alfred handed over another letter from the master to the head maid. Already in the garden, the Emperor was sitting and eating cookies. The Duke approached him and asked to be released from today's service for the sake of the health of his family, and tomorrow he will go to work early and deal with all the matters. Then the Emperor explained that this matter was not at all urgent. It's just a new chef making good cookies, and he wanted to share with the daring one. The Duke was angered by this and urgently decided to leave. It's already evening, and the servants looked for the mistress. I even managed to come to the Duke, who immediately asked what was happening here. The head maid explained. The fact is that they received a message that he would arrive soon. They began to look for the lady to tell her, but she disappeared. A few hours earlier. The girl was glad that her husband was working late today, even if according to documents he is her husband, but sleep in the same room with a man whom she barely knows and does not want, and even if he has a good body. In any case, she probably isn't even attractive in that regard either. Surely he made us sleep together to show the servants that they were a happy couple and kept the promises they made in the morning. Fulfilling the wife's contractual duty and separating peacefully is her goal. This is the best she can offer the Duke. Therefore, after thinking carefully, she decided to go back. Well, I saw a house in the garden that was previously unknown to her. When she went inside, she saw that there was no one except a small black cat. The girl immediately realized that if she left her here, she might die of hunger. But if it's banned, she'll never see her mom again. But since she must have a lot of time left, she will even wait with the cat for her mother to return. Now the time may have come when they started looking for the girl. Then Madame Tilly noticed two cats who were running away from the house. Go inside the small house, the woman saw the lady who was sleeping, but it was a great chance for her. Therefore, even later, she told the gentleman that she had looked everywhere and even now at everyone else in the castle. But she never found her anywhere. The lady checked everywhere except his cottage. Go inside the little house, Herzog saw his wife, who slept comfortably on the floor. Well, as soon as the man came closer to her, she also woke up. One thing he managed to see was how beautiful she was in that dress. Herzog immediately explained that this was his personal cottage, where he spends time when he wants to be alone. He shook hands with Erwin and suggested she go home. She immediately realized that he was wearing the suit he had left in the morning, which meant he didn't stay long if they returned home like that. This will lead her to her wedding night. That's why she replied that she didn't want to. After all, if she goes back with him, she will have to sleep with him. So the girl suggested another option. What if they go back home? Then they will just sleep in different beds. But in one room, they had to play a loving couple in front of everyone. In addition, Hertz himself said that he did not want children from her. Of course, he was embarrassed but said that he didn't say that. Well, suddenly Hertz felt a strange smell. This scent made him go crazy. He immediately understood what it was because he took it right out of the girl's dress. The Duke explained that girls have been using such a bag to seduce guys for over a century. In addition, all the conditions for seduction have been met. Makeup that took a lot of effort, a beautiful outfit, and even a seductive aroma. Irvin believed her. It was the maid themselves who took her to dress her up like that, and she promised them to wear it like that until the evening. And she didn't think anything of it. Since she completed the maid's task, Herzog also wanted his wish to be realized. The girl understood that if it all ended like this, she would have pulled out this bag from the other side. How could she have known that the guy would return home earlier and hadn't warned her yet? The guy took the girl in his arms. She didn't know what he was planning. At the same moment, he laid her on the bed. Erwin was sure that they will look for her in the mansion. But the Duke doesn't understand why. If he's next to her, then she's safe. And they are now spending time together. And since he wants to hug a woman in such a place, he's more of a lustful animal. After such words, the guy got angry. How can a girl talk about such things? At that moment, the guy got rid of himself. He clings to her and fights with an insatiable thirst all the time. This is the most powerful revenge. The girl was even surprised at what purples. After all, he said that he was clinging to her, but he never showed any feelings of love or affection towards her. Moreover, originally the girl and the guy were not connected by love. Well, suddenly it started raining outside the window. That's why the guys are definitely staying here for now. Well, since the girls listened to the grumbling of their stomach, Hertz suggested they start eating. Also in this house there was wine that the Duke offered to his wife. She drank it with pleasure. After that, he noticed crumbs on her cheeks, so I decided to help her dry herself. Now the guys decided to discuss something. Since Erwin wanted to sleep in different beds but not in one, these were her conditions. But the guy was against it, and they will only sleep together. Which spouses sleep in different beds? And if the maid comes in the morning, sees and tells the elders, the guy didn't know what to do. But they will follow one rule. Neither one nor the other will do what they don't want. In addition, he will be able to have an Armenian woman with another partner to whom he will be sincerely devoted. Hearing these words, the Duke was indignant. He understood what other wife might be talking about. Well, he agreed anyway. She saw his anger. After all, the reason lay in the conversation about the child, and also about the other partner. It seemed that the rain would not stop any time soon. Then the girl shouldn't really sleep here, not just the two of you and no one else with your husband. Only Irvin wanted to go to bed on payday, holding her and stopping her so that she could sleep next to him. He pulled her towards him, and they made one bed together. Only the girl again wanted to come to the floor to sleep there. She realized that it was cold from the weapon, so it would be better if she slept with the guy with the same blanket. She didn't even have such a previous life. The girl fell asleep. The Duke watched as she slept. He understood that he really wanted to be gentle with her, but every time she tries to push him away from her, and he cannot contain his sadness. He wants to know how she really feels. But he is afraid to find out the truth. He didn't know if he could really love her like before. Will she reject love again? This house is his fortress. Here he gave in to the girl's cruelty, and now they are here together. But it was a little hot, so he undressed. She was so mean. But the day she fainted, he has no idea what she was thinking. He is glad that she has become much better towards him, but still he wants to hear something more from her. He confessed to her that he loved her. After all, he never spoke about this. Erwin woke up next to her. It was Madame Tilly. The girl immediately wondered why she ended up in her bed because she had just been in the house. Madame Tilly decided to explain everything, that the gentleman brought her in the house here at dawn, and he was very careful. He carried her as if she were the most fragile artifact in the world. He also said that on the day of unity, he will now sleep on this bed where the girl is now. And as soon as the gentleman deals with political affairs, then come to her room more and more often. However, the girl realized that she had promised not to touch her without permission. If you think so, then he made this promise for the sake of using the opinion of marital duty. She didn't know if he thought that having children was divisible for a long time. Madame asked the girl how the night went. Surely the bag of scent came in handy. There are only 3 such bags in the entire empire. The elders presented it to her as a gift. Even couples that were close to divorce united. Suddenly a maid ran into the room with a message. The gentleman gave instructions that after 2 today, he told the lady to go to the fitting. If we are talking about fitting, then most likely it all comes down to payment for the celebration next week. The gentleman most likely spoke about this, but this was the first time the girl had heard about it. They will go to a clothing store with the main character, Madame Bertin. Madame Bertin is an equal woman, which is found only with the imperial family. She sewed a custom-made dress for the empress several times, and the gentleman wants her to sew a dress for the main character. The girl understood what a gesture was even too much after they discussed all their responsibilities in marriage. The maid was discussing how the mistress had quarreled with the master. After all, she noticed something interesting on the bed that would leave traces of blood, and won several. Madame Tilly knew the truth, that the gentleman began to hold his hand. Apparently, habits from childhood do not go away over the years. If he thinks so, he will also be embarrassed. Already at the castle, the Duke was asked why he was so late. After all, no one could believe that such a punctual person could be late. Ask him if this happened because something bad happened at home. And the guy didn't answer that something good happened to you. The man heard that the relationship between the Duke and the Duchess had improved, and asked if it was true, to which the Duke responded positively. Everyone also, of course, remembered how the Duchess performed at her first debut. She looked so beautiful singing it. One solved was very happy. Therefore, he suggested sending herbs for a good pregnancy, but the Duke bit his lip in anger, and he was rude to the man that this was just their personal concern. Besides, he would not tolerate it if they put the girl in an awkward position. It was time for him to meet with His Imperial Majesty, so he left. A little later, the operator noticed that she was late as always. A little later, the Duke and the Emperor decided to have a couple's battle, and both guys began to undress. Interest also took off his shirt, and he showed his bandages on his hands. The two guys then started a fight, on their swords. During sparring, the Emperor took off the bandage and saw that there were marks on the Duke that only the girl could leave. So I asked him how his night went. At one moment, the Emperor came closer, and she said that in relationships with girls, at least sometimes they are brought to passion on the bodies of their boyfriends, that he doesn't have to worry about it because of his ball. One moment, Hertz knocked the sword out of the Emperor. Walking closer to him, Fervin said that you shouldn't interfere in the relationship between a husband and wife without having any idea what's going on there. After this, the Emperor just smiled and stood up, and he noticed that apparently his subordinate was doing well with his wife. He smiled because of all this. Even though he lost, designing this would already be commonplace. Then the Emperor offered them 1 and 9. What if girls don't like Duke's body? Then he should go and think of something. He has just such a moment to fix it. So I suggested that he hurry up. 4 years ago, Madame Bertin became a phenomenon in the fashion world of the Empire. All the ladies of the Empire wanted to try on her dresses, and her sense of style and reputation was the envy of everyone. However, her dress alone could cost as much as an entire estate, so it doesn't seem like aristocrats could pamper their wives with it, and let her start from the very bottom. Even having reached her level now, she did not allow anyone who could buy them to wear her dresses. She was quite famous for her luxury and confidence. Well, Madame Bertin was very excited today. She even managed to yell at the maid for not even knowing who was supposed to arrive today, and what needs to be put away where it should be. She explained that the one who is there now will come today thanks to her. Her inspiration is her muse, main character. The Duke and Duchess were riding in a carriage. Suddenly the man reluctantly said that his body hurt, and the girl asked what he was doing all the time in the palace, that everything hurt him. And she was also interested in the question of why he decided to sit next to her and didn't mind. Suddenly she turned her gaze to the street, because if they think so, then this is the first time she has left the estate in this life. During the dialogue, the girl noticed that the Duke was bleeding. Because of the shirt, she then asked to see it. But he didn't want to do this. But still, because of the request of an obsessive girl, she still saw the wounds, and she began to suspect that it happened last night, and that it was done by a cat that was inside the house. She began to worry very much about him. It is natural that he should remain healthy until the end of the divorce, and she would worry about him at least a little, but suddenly, he said that it was all because of her. The guys arrived at the store. They were met by Madame Bertin, who was glad to meet them. Madame also noticed that ordinary dresses would not be suitable for the Duchess. Since ancient times, clothing has better emphasized the beauty of the wearer. The dress should not be more beautiful than her. It should only emphasize her beauty. Those dresses are certainly beautiful, but they are clearly not suitable for her beauty. Therefore, Madame Bertin promised to do everything possible to make her shine on her evening. Already at the festival, the Duchess and Duke appeared in new outfits. Everyone around began to notice this at first glance. The guys went straight to the Empress and Emperor, and they greeted them. The Empress immediately noticed the new dress. She asked if it was from Madame Bertin. Why did you receive a positive response? Then she began to notice that for so many years, she had been begging her to sew one line. And she also asked the Emperor to buy this red dress. Madame Bertin refused them. The Emperor said that this dress was not for sale. Then Erwin hugged her husband and explained what if it weren't for his help, she wouldn't be able to pull off this dress. After all, he had his own connections with Madame Bertin. The girl understood that there were many people here who had not been to the ball. So if she shows her wonderful, sweet relationship with her husband, the rumors will only spread that way. And in public, the girl thanked her husband, which made him blush, and the emperor and empress laughed at this scene. So the girl offered her husband a drink, and the emperor and empresses left them. Both started drinking wine, but not suddenly. Fervin asked the girl what she was doing. Why does she act like this in public? Namely, the fact that she was the first to touch him and what she said to the emperor and empress. It's like a loving wife. Then she again noticed that she was already his wife. After all, she would just like to show that they have a good relationship as a couple. Only the girl wanted to invite her husband to dance. His face suddenly changed. He came closer to her and asked her to straighten her hair. Also dress a little more modestly and cover up in front of strangers. This was his request. Everyone around saw this scene, and we were very surprised because they both looked simply incredible. Then the girl also decided to show concern in public, and she wiped his mouth after the wine. To my husband, why is he blushing? Fervin could hold back no longer. He hugged the girl and said quietly to her, so that she would be tender with him not only in public. The audience can see she takes his hand, and she leans her head on his chest. But it doesn't even concern the house. Then she asked if this was her duty as the wife of a duke. Then Ferwin realized after these words. After all, a girl does not have to be a good wife to him always. She promised to be only a good wife to the duke. But he wanted something else. Then he exchanged it even harder. And he told her that she could behave as she freely wanted. There is no need to force him to be too wholesome. All this was observed by the Duke of Sibel. He is over 20 and very famous for his frivolity. But with his attractive appearance, with tall stature and charming smile, he is constantly on the list of desired suitors. Taking into account the fact that the operator's family does not have a male heir, the likelihood of him entering the highest circles is very high. And many of Socrates' families tried to establish connections with him. However, the guy's gaze was on the dead man. Erwin could only notice the glances that were all directed at them. She also tried to lift up her husband's words. She didn't fully understand what she wanted to tell her. Fervin, how worried she is, so I told her that she could worry about his words later. Now is the time to dance. Erwin suddenly saw Miss Bell, but Erwin knew the end of this story. So I asked my husband if he knew this girl, and I was close to him in childhood, and she suggested that he invite Belle to dance. To make her happy, you shouldn't be afraid, and she's not one of those who is jealous of her childhood friends. But Fervin decided to dance only with his wife. Erwin no longer wanted to think about anything else, and she achieved her goal of showing everyone what a good wife she is, so you can just enjoy the moment. Fervin asked her to look into his eyes, and the guys continued to dance. A little later, the girl was sitting alone. She understood that, and yet she liked to dance. And it's good that she learned this. Fervin had already approached her with glasses. I noticed that she danced quite well in her first dance. Suddenly, an assistant came running and called the Duke away if he said that His Majesty wanted to see the Duke in person, and something urgent that he had to tell him. Before leaving, he approached his wife, and he asked her for a promise that the lips of other men would not touch her wrist. The girl was left alone. She watched various nobles dance. She understood that the truth was that an aristocrat's popularity was determined by how often he or she was asked to dance. But for some reason, no one called her. Of course, everyone in this room saw how well she got along with her husband, but still, nobody invited her. While Ferwin was walking to His Majesty, an aristocrat approached him, who asked permission to dance with his wife. At first, the Duke answered positively, but later he changed his face and replied that if the guys want his mouth, the Duke, to become their enemy forever, then let them dance. Ferwin is the Emperor's right hand. He might be busy, so the girl had nothing left to do. She understood why he might be pulled out midpoint. Well, for some reason, within 30 minutes she was already sitting in the middle of the room. Bella's friends seemed to be avoiding her, and when Duchess Celestine heads in her direction, they immediately pull her in the other direction. Suddenly, the Emperor himself appeared and offered to dance the bunts. She agreed because it was her salvation. All this was observed by Fervin himself, who was angry at this scene. Then the Emperor asked permission to kiss the girl's hand. Although she answered negatively, he still continued to pull his lips towards her hand. And then the Duke himself appeared instead of him. The Duke explained that his wife was inexperienced and did not often attend such events. Until she got used to it, he would only dance with her alone. Erwin understood that His Majesty was simply joking with her husband. This is probably punishment for him leaving her. Well, what an embarrassed face Fervin had. She apologized to His Majesty, and she said that today she dances only with her husband. After all, he cares about her so much, so she cannot refuse him. Already alone, the Empress and the Emperor discussed how the Duke and Duke danced. The Emperor didn't know what they had been doing there for 4 years, but now they can't take their eyes off each other. At this rate, it may be possible to establish a relationship between the Teresia Empire and the Verma Duchy. The Emperor did not have time to finish. After all, I remembered a letter from Archduke Lilius. He contacted him for this one too, but forgot to talk about the other one too. If it concerns the Archduke, Ferwin become his target. and he needs to be prepared for this. So on the floor, he began to call the Duke. Because they had something to talk about. Well, this time Ferwin didn't really want to leave. He's all gone. After the main character asked him, and also she was left alone again. She understood that Rio Mole was keeping aloof, communicating with each other, and her husband seemed to have a long conversation between the Emperor and Ferwin. She didn't understand that they could discuss it with each other for so long. After all, they last seriously. But without hesitation, she said that she wanted to be close to her husband. And why was she immediately embarrassed and began to understand that it seemed like she definitely had feelings? The only person she knows here is her husband, and he's the only one she can rely on. Some aristocratic women stood behind the wall. They saw how Herzog finally left his wife and didn't really want to talk to her and introduce himself to her. But one of them was worried that she was simply ugly and would anger the Duchess. When they turned their gaze back to the table, the Duchess disappeared from there, and they didn't realize that they had missed their chance. The Imperial Rosary is famous as the largest on the continent. During the day, it is one of the most popular places to visit among aristocrats and other countries. And at night, couples kiss everywhere there. Now the main character understood why at the beginning of the ball there were so many more people. Now they are all gone. And they are not going to return, as if they would indulge in love pleasures further. Before, she didn't understand why there weren't a single lamp in the garden. But now it is clear that this is where all the lovers are hiding. Therefore, she understood that it was better to go back and sit there alone. Well, suddenly Fervin pressed her to the wall. 15 minutes ago, the Emperor and the Duke were talking about how Lilius would come to the Empire. Leon Lilius, Archduke of the Duchy of Verma, who replaced the previous one who suddenly died in the war. The only time Ferwin crossed paths with him was at his wedding. It is far from easy for the head of the Hertz to visit another country, so the visits clearly have a reason. Fervin understood why he was going to come here. This is all due to the fact that he has no children. Therefore, the Emperor noticed that the Duke should worry about the heir because he is not the Emperor. But the head of the family and the child can do it himself. Surely he himself knows what to say, how much he wants a child. Leon will stay at Fervin's estate. Therefore, the Emperor ordered a thorough cleaning there. And if he felt that his little sister didn't like it here, he could take her away from him. Well, suddenly Fervin noticed that his wife had disappeared somewhere. Then the Emperor said that it seemed she was heading into the garden, and then he found her and at the same moment asked what she was doing here. The Duke asked the girl why she left, and then she replied that she was so bored that she didn't know what to do, and she came here. Then Ferwin noticed that there was quite a lot of mistletoe around, and he noticed that they say that if lovers kiss under it, they will live happily ever after. Then the girl replied that they were not lovers, but maybe they were his wife. Fervin grabbed her closer to him, and he answered that since they are husband and wife, they must love each other at least accurately. The air made them so intoxicated, or they themselves are drunk with the air around them. She didn't understand why he behaved this way because he said not to disturb his heart. That's why she didn't know why he was doing this to her. And suddenly he kissed her. Duke Sibel was looking for Erwin. He saw exactly how she walked towards the garden. In fact, Ferwin kissed his wife on the cheek. After all, behind them stood the Duke of Sibel. Duke Sibel continued to look for Erwin. His companion began to note that the Ferwin was more like a log. He can't even touch a woman. Erwin heard all this, and why did she get angry? Because he is clearly not a log and knows nothing about him. Rather, he is like a torch that was lit once and now it will burn forever. The Duke of Sibel saw the silhouette of the heroes, and I decided to go in this direction after hearing this. Erwin decided to take the initiative into her own hands and therefore kissed her husband herself. After the kiss, the girl understood that she was just going to pretend to kiss him in order to convince those who doubt Fervin Sibeloma. But suddenly she realized that she was angry at his own words. But after that, Ferwin himself kissed her again. After the kiss, the Duke has changed because he kissed him so suddenly. After all, she started and he couldn't stop. So I warned her that she would be more careful before. Then the girl also apologized. She was the first to touch his lips. She should have apologized first. And both were embarrassed by their words. Only the girl wanted to start a conversation about why Duke Sibellum was so angry with her husband. He got angry and asked not to talk about other men in front of him. Not understanding why Ferwin got angry again. He explained that he was angry with those who dared to put their wicked gaze on her. Samu. He doesn't like the fact that she looks at others. He would like his wife to look only at him. Irvin doesn't understand at all why he's been acting this way lately. He asks to be gentle with him. He asks not to hold back, to look only at him. But she doesn't understand reality if that's all. Therefore, she asked why he should behave even this way and she does not love him. Why did he immediately leave her? Well, he explained that it doesn't matter because he loves her more than anything in the world. Erwin finally realized that Hertz is in love with her. She has a lot to believe in it. After all, in the novel, everything was different. Well, when Ferwin asked me to answer him, what does the girl herself think? She just apologized. After all, she cannot give him the same answer. Only the girl wanted to explain that they want a married couple and they have a good relationship. Fervin asked to stop talking like that. As soon as Erwin saw Fervin's tears, she asked him not to cry. It hurts when he cries. But the guy simply turned away and asked her to forget everything he had told her before when he was drunk. When the guys returned back to the castle, Madame Tilly met them. Immediately she asked the gentleman if he was going to spend the night with his wife, but then his face changed, and he replied that they were not in the mood. Personally, he went to his office. Erwin and Madame Tilly remained at the entrance. In his office, Hertz understood that in this relationship only he had feelings. He understood that she would have lied, and always wanted to hear from her that she loved him. Maybe he wants too much. But he himself doesn't fully understand. He understood that he shouldn't have kissed her then. Even if Sibellum had found them, there was no malt like this. Of course he was only going to pretend, but he was lost in her. She touched first. The kiss was so sweet that it clouded his mind. He imagined that she also had feelings for him, what burst out in one kiss. However, I remember her words about how she can love him. It's unrealistic. At that same moment, he realized that he needed to pull himself together. After all, she would never say that, but I didn't understand if there was a difference. How difficult it all was for him. He needed to get some fresh air. Postcard office, he saw Madame Tilly and Erwin. That moment when Erwin turned to look at the doors, they were already closed. A few days later, Madame Tilly and Erwin were sitting in the garden. Madame Tilly was surprised when I heard that the gentleman was avoiding his wife. Then Erwin began to tell me that lately he had been leaving early at dawn and returning only after the girl had gone to bed. Well, even when he's at home, it's as if he's deliberately trying not to intersect with her. She thought he was angry but didn't understand why. Madame Tilly asked me to tell him what happened at the ball. After the full story, from start to finish, Madame Tilly looked very scared. She was surprised that the young girl simply does not understand the reasons why the gentleman is angry. It's obvious. When all the servants had gathered, I asked the guys, what does it mean when a guy kisses a girl and she rejects him back? Of course, the girl's servants, Madame's maids, only saw how Hertz kissed the girl. But they didn't finally wait for this time and understood perfectly well that the atmosphere at the ball would be ideal for this. But Fervin was only interested in the question of what to do and what it meant if he was rejected. Alfred assumed that this meant that the girl was kissed against her will. After all, if he had kissed her correctly, then she would not have had a chance to refuse him. Alfredo wanted to continue, but the maid turned him off. Then Madame Tilly took him, who explained that if a kiss is refused, it's not the end of the world. We have to go ahead. Sitting in his office, the Duke was thinking about the topic that he had just discussed with the head maid. At first, he really wanted to try, but how to do it with his wife. He didn't fully understand giving flowers or decorations, or maybe just land right away. I was thinking about the answer. Then the Emperor distracted him. The Emperor said that Duke Leon would arrive tomorrow. After all, his schedule was freed up. Leon also said that he would have a short conversation in the palace, and then he would go to Ferwin's house. And he is coming to him after the refusals of many aristocrats, so he needs to be well prepared. Madame Tilly said that dinner is ready. As soon as the girl came down for dinner, Fervin wet himself. After all, before that, I sent a letter to the girl and asked her to put me on a revealing dress. It will be cold. Then the Duke himself decided to undress a little. The same moment Alfreda approached him and offered to change some clothes. A younger maid ran by and grabbed Alfred and took him from there. The guy started a dialogue. Fervin said that he wants to please the girl, but she replied that he had been strange lately. It's not that he was avoiding her, but his actions are all very awkward. Then he asked if everything could be the same as it was before. The Duke said that it would be impossible to go back. She had changed. He had changed. As soon as the guy started pouring alcohol, the girl took the bottle from him. And she knew very well that her brother would arrive tomorrow, and they should look like a perfect couple. Fervin pulled her towards him by the waist. He himself knew very well that he had to show even that if they were so close to each other, then there would be no awkwardness between them. She knows that their marriage is not a personal matter, but a matter of peace between two countries. Leon refused to allow the other aristocrat to come to them, which means that he wants to keep an eye on how the two of them behave and what their personal lives are like. Now the girl understood perfectly why the guy behaved so strangely. He was just worried that when her brother arrived, they would have to be even closer. And then he moves away because he feels awkward with her. Now everything is explained. That the guy began to behave strangely after the ball is explained by the news about the arrival of her brother. In the original story, and not just an enemy of two countries, and the vaginal guy loved the girl. Erwin promised that everything would be fine, and she will cooperate with him. Then Hertz asked whether there would be cooperation on all points, namely unity. After all, adults in the family predict that there will soon be a good day for conception. I keep waiting, and he can't do anything about it. Well, the man also said that without her permission he would not touch her. The next day Leon arrived with the Emperor. The Emperor noticed that Leon looked good, and he also said that he had heard that his wife was pregnant, so he congratulated him with all his heart. Here, in turn, the Hertz thanked the emperor. I hope he is happier, because it was not easy for them with the child. Leon was unhappy that he did not see Duke Ferwin. Then the emperor remembered the letter, in which it was said that the guy had a hangover from yesterday. Therefore, he will not be able to meet Leon. Erwin came to her husband's office. She brought him special tea. In turn, he asked her to pick him good clothes. After all, he wants to look neat in front of his wife. Both came out together. Back dressed, they were told that Leon was waiting for them in the corridor. When we went inside and didn't see him, look at the pictures where his sister was. Only Ferwin wanted to say hello to him. Leon simply ignored him and walked past him to go to his sister. Erwin tensed. If you think about it that way, her brother would find her behavior strange if she acted as usual. Considering the girl's character in the original, she didn't know whether she should deliberately act so coldly. And therefore she did not know what her brother was called by title or just by name. But then her brother's face changed, and he immediately hugged his sister. He was glad to see me and asked how she was doing, if she was in any pain, because there had been no news from her for a long time, so he was worried. Then the girl said that everything was fine and called her brother Hertz, and we were very surprised. He forbade her to use this address because they are brother and sister. She can just call him brothers as usual. Leon asked the Duke to leave because he wanted to be alone with his sister because they needed to talk. I just wanted to pass by. He hinted to the girl that she should somehow express her feelings in order to show in public that they are on good terms. So she kissed him on the lips. The girl realized that she needed to kiss his cheek, but she accidentally kissed him on the lips. The guys went into the garden. Her brother was glad that his sister lived in such a good place. He apologized that he could not come after the wedding. The health of his wife was in such poor condition that there was no thought of leaving. He was, of course, ashamed to be called her brother. He doesn't care about her at all. Therefore, he asked whether her husband treated her well. And what about news unification? Irvin told him that in 4 years they had hardly spoken. That's why they didn't have the same case. All the guys were having dinner. Leon wanted to ask one question. How are things going with Unity? After all, he was in their bedroom as a common point, and noticed that it was so clean that they most likely did not sleep there. Fervin explained, what is not the rule is that a couple should sleep only in the matrimonial room. The maid service was surprised. They finally realized that they had Unity not only in the marriage room, and the couple decided to play for each other. The brother decided to send his sister to bed, and he decided to chat a little more with her husband. When your boyfriend is left alone. First of all, Leon asked Fervin if he was already drunk. Well, I received a negative answer. Ferwin was glad to meet in such an environment because it was as if they had seen each other on the battlefield yesterday. Leon was also happy to meet, although he changed his face and replied that the relationship between them was not the most convenient. Ferwin understood that this was a look that he did not show to his sister, but he had already seen it before on the battlefield. But in reality, he is not the worst person. It was he who convinced the father, who had never previously recognized illegitimate children, to accept the girl and give her the surname Lilius, but a provocation on his part that his contribution was the restoration of relations between the two sides, spoiled by the Duke's earlier attack. A year after Erwin's wedding, his father died, and the guy himself became an archduke and ruler of the country. The empire, of course, helps previously defeated countries. However, this shows that he is quite capable of managing the situation. Leon, in turn, thought only one thing, that standing in front of him was his beloved younger sister's husband. And it is clear that he is much better than the one who threatened his sister, but the guy still always saw in this marriage only a way to improve relations between the two countries. Of course, everything is not so bad if the girl is happy. In Verma, his sister suddenly appeared as the Duke's daughter. Everyone hid the fact that she was an illegitimate child, but rumors about this spread throughout the empire. When a girl who previously worked as a maid in a tavern suddenly became the princess of the country, people are like rashes, throwing insults and saying that she will forever remain an illegitimate child. The reason why the girl got married was simply because she knew that they would achieve a peaceful and happy life in their homeland. Fervin accepted the fact that the girl was not degenerate even before the wedding. After all, in the Empire this is much easier. In addition, as soon as an heir is born, one of them will become the rightful heir to the Carlyle family. The next day, Leon betrayed the book. After all, he himself had problems conceiving. That's why I wanted to pass on the secret. The younger maid came running and said that the eldest had arrived. Fervin himself hunted for the knees along with the emperor, but he still missed and couldn't hit, which surprised the emperor. The guy himself understood perfectly well that this was all because of the book they gave him. These, after he read it, he cannot think of everything but her. The emperor saw the embarrassed face of his comrade. Like I noticed that it seems Leon is very much due to his lack of proper skills. He said that he made a real man out of him. Then he asked what the secret was. Fervin received a letter. The letter was written that the ancients found out the date for the Night of Unity, so they were expecting it. After all members of the people are waiting for him. The elders also talked to Erwin and her that the astrologer specially calculated the best day for conception, and he was paid a very large fee for it. The day of blessing is considered to be April 30th.